themselves well-rounded athletes, extraordinary athletes. And when we're talking about that, we're basically talking about strengthening their mental performance, plain and simple. I think one of the biggest things today is we put so much time and money and effort into, is my son on the right travel team? Am I going to the right showcases? Am I paying for the right lessons? First and foremost, I think our mental ability has to be right if we're going to be doing some of those things. So we're so quick to throw money at those things, which I understand. A lot of those things are very beneficial, but at the same time, we have to be mentally strong. We have to be able to combat things like anxiety, depression, whatever it may be, that dealing with failure. There's so many little issues that we go through as athletes. And I think that for me, it's always been important to give back to the community and be able to provide ways virtually, in the classroom, whatever it may be, to where we can strengthen that mental performance. And you can check me out at xoathletes.com. We're actually got a virtual lesson plan going now. People are joining in, so jump on it.
Dude, Xavier, so we got a lot of things going on in the world today. I want to talk about three things today. Okay. Leadership, accountability, and responsibility. So in times like today, off the field, on the field, we don't have to get into anything specific. Everybody knows what's going on in the world that's watching this, right? But let's keep it focused on what we're talking about. We're talking about the mental side of things, right? So talk to me about leadership. How are you a leader? Let's look at it two ways. In the world today with what's going on, how are you a leader in your community? And then on the baseball field, how are you a leader?
Right, right. Well, first of all, when we break down leadership, I think it's important to understand that, like you said, leadership can be on a team, it can be in a family, it can be in the community. It's not just one place. I think for extraordinary athletes, we have to remember that leadership comes with placing somebody else before ourselves.
Right.
That's the first thing. And I think that if we understand within our family, hey, sometimes I have a sibling that's going to be looking up to me. It's important for me to remember that and to know that I have a state of influence on that person or that sibling or my brother, my sister. I need to understand. Let me put him first, his behavior, his actions before mine. So that means showing them the right examples, leading them in the right way, being a positive light in their whole area, like in their whole family. You want to just be a positive light toward them. And you want to make sure that your influence is used the right way ultimately. And I think for us, it's a part of stepping outside of the box. It's a part of doing things that we may not necessarily want to do. Leaders have to go above and beyond. They have to show people the right way. And when we're talking about a team aspect of things, that may be, hey, I'm showing up early to make sure that all my teammates see that I'm taking responsibility to be in charge here. I'm taking responsibility to help my former or my athletes that are with me. So I think it's also important to understand that when I talk about thinking outside the box, may not necessarily, as a leader, you may not necessarily always be thinking about, okay, how does this affect the game? But look at my teammate. Maybe I see him down for some reason. Maybe he seems upset. Maybe he had a struggling at bat. Maybe it could be a different issue. So maybe being a leader is a part of taking the time to maybe after the game, hey man, what's going on? I noticed you weren't yourself today. So I think it's doing those little things that maybe not necessarily be so noticeable on the field, but those little things that, you make an impact on a teammate, you make an impact on a coach. And those are like some of the little intangibles that coaches at the next level are looking for, especially college coaches, professional coaches. They're looking at who's going to be a leader, who's going to be someone that they can lean on to get a message across to the team, the rest of the team. And ultimately, your leadership doesn't necessarily have to come from the way that you speak, but it's more about your actions. So I think it's important for athletes to remember every little action that I do represents myself and also can represent my team, the name on the back of the jersey, the name on the front of the jersey. So it's important to remember that I don't need to yell to be a leader, but if somebody's watching me and I want to be a leader,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to watch my actions more than anything.
Do you think anybody can be a leader, or do you think that's something that somebody is born with? Do you think it's something that somebody can acquire? What are your thoughts on that?
No, no, I definitely think that that's something that you can acquire.
Okay.
If you're born and the doctor says, you know what, this guy can't be a leader. He doesn't have no, this baby cannot be a leader. No, that doesn't happen. Those are traits that are acquired through practice, through progress. And I think it's important for athletes to strive to want to be a leader. Obviously, not everybody's going to end up having those skills, but you can always work on those skills and you can always work on them inside and outside of your game, because I think that that's something that you build as a person. You're always building to be the best that you can be. And maybe leadership is one of those qualities. So you need to build toward that. You're not going to be a leader like all of a sudden. You're not going to be somebody that someone's always looking up to all of a sudden. You have to perform. You have to strategically do the right things. You have to have the right actions. Your voice needs to um, be weighed in a positive manner. So those are the things that I think that can help you eventually start to get those qualities of a leader.
For someone that, wants to be a leader, first of all, let's take a break real quick. We're here on the Prospect Dugout Network. We're talking with Xavier Scruggs. Spent 3 seasons in the big leagues with the Cardinals and the Marlins. Spent some time overseas, a lot of time in professional baseball. Still a free agent. Actually, was just hitting today, getting his body in shape, or keeping his body in shape. When the call comes, he's going to be ready. That's something that we've talked about numerous times on our other shows with Nick Swisher. Being ready, knowing yourself, being ready when the call is made, so that way you're ahead of the game. We're on this show. It's called the X Factor with Xavier Scruggs. And the reason why it's called the X Factor is because the purpose of what Xavier is doing on the mental side of the game of baseball and what he's trying to impact and impart into young athletes and older athletes is how to go from being good to extraordinary, right? What is that X factor? What takes you from being just an all around, there's nothing wrong with being good, right? But if you're just good, the higher you get up in competition level, the more good people you're going to see. So you need to stand out. And so that's what we're here for in this time where we're away from the baseball field, in this time where, we're not at school, we're not around our friends. Now, all of a sudden we're getting to the summer. People are starting to get back. Baseball is starting to get played again in Florida. I was just at a tournament this past couple of days. I'm sunburnt, right? But things are getting back into it. And so we've opened up our platform to provide this insight. And so today's show, we're talking about leadership, responsibility, and accountability. And so, Xavier, I wanted to keep going on leadership. Now, you're talking about the qualities of being a leader and what it's like to be a leader. And then I asked you, do you think it's inherent, or do you think that that's something that you can develop as a human being? And you said, yes, you think it's something you can develop. So let's take it to the next step. Someone that wants to be a leader, doesn't know how to be a leader, has just heard what you've said and is on board with that. What's the first couple steps that they can take to become a leader in their environment?
Yeah, I think some of the first, well, let me give you a little bit background. I think like it's good to implement this little story here. I feel like self-evaluation is huge for a leader. And that's one of the first steps. So for me, I remember I was in AAA with the Cardinals, trying to fight my way to get to the big leagues, working super hard. Remember, I was playing really well. But at the same time, I was being taken out defensively from right field or left field. I was playing in the outfield, being taken out defensively later in the game, 7th, 8th inning, for maybe a quote unquote better defensive player. So I remember going to my manager at the time, Mike Schiltz's office, who's now the St. Louis Cardinals manager. I remember going to his office and kind of closing the door and saying, "Hey, Mike, what's going on, man? You keep taking me out in the 7th, 8th inning, and I feel like I could be getting another at bat. I could be helping the team in the outfield, at the plate." And he told me, he said, "Hey, X, like, your defense has been good, but it can always be better. I think we have to get it better in order for you to get to the next level and in order for you to stay in the big leagues. They're going to be counting on you defensively." And it was kind of like almost at that point it was a wake up for
Mhm.
me, because I went in the office being challenging because I knew that I was one of the best players on the team
Mhm.
and I knew I shouldn't be taken out of the lineup. But it was a wake up call to me and said, hey, if in order for me not to just go to the big leagues, but in order for me to stay there, I need to be a great defensive player. I can't just be a good defensive player. So he reminded me that there's other players that are better than me on the roster in the outfield. That's something I need to work on so I don't get taken out of the game. So when we go back and talk about leadership, I think one of the biggest steps, the first step is holding yourself accountable. We'll talk about accountability, but holding yourself accountable and recognizing what the things are that you do well and the things are that you don't do so well. Maybe some of the weaknesses that you have. It's easy for us to always work on the things that we do really well, but if we understand, okay, let me go to my coach, what are some of my weaknesses? And then they tell us, it's one thing to say, okay, I understand my weaknesses, but no, it's another thing to go work on those things and let my teammates see those things that I'm working on. Um, Even if you're the best player on your team, there are always things that you could be working on. And when you show others that you're working on those things and that you don't think necessarily I'm better than everybody else, I think that's a great first step. For me, it was understanding that if I call myself a professional and I call myself wanting to get to the highest level of my profession, I'm going to have to take care of the things that I'm not doing so well. I could have took it another way. The people that can't be leaders, or the people that aren't accepting of that leadership role, they're going to go into the office. They're going to find out what they're not well at, and then they're going to brush it off or be mad at the coach. So my thing is, as a leader, you have to take it upon yourself to understand, okay, there's always something I can get better at. There's always somebody watching me, especially my teammates. And then we talked about family too. You got siblings, you got your parents, they're watching you. You're always an influence on somebody. So use that positively.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that's important to touch on. You mentioned when, this is kind of what I got out of it. Like when someone's giving you feedback, when someone's giving you positive or negative feedback, as a leader, you need to accept that. You need to embrace that and look at it from that perspective. So I think that that's a difficult thing for a player to be, grinding, to be out on the field, hustling, putting in 100%, and his coach come up and be like, dude, you're falling asleep over here. You're doing this. It's hard to bite your tongue and not say, coach, it's 96 degrees outside. I'm soaked in sweat. You just saw me lay out for this ball, right? If you want to be a good leader, you have to learn how to hear, right? You can't just talk all the time, because if you're leading, you need to know information. I can't lead you if I got my eyes closed. How am I gonna take you anywhere? Where am I gonna take you with my eyes closed? I'm not gonna take you anywhere with my eyes closed, right? And so I say that just to make a point, right? As a leader, and as a player on a team, you want to be a leader, but you got a coach telling you how to be better. You got your leader of the team, the coach, telling you, the player that wants to be a leader, to fix something, or you're not doing this, or you're not doing this. He doesn't not like you. If he didn't like you, he wouldn't be talking to you, right? You're already laying out, your jersey's dirty, you're sweaty, right? You're out of breath, but he's still telling you, hey, give me more, right? How does that make you look as a player when you're trying to be a leader, but you're not listening to the person that's leading the team, right? So I think that that's very important, for you to mention that, is that whether it's on the baseball field or in life, you can close off a lot of people by talking. You can close off a lot of people. I'm not saying that you have to agree with everybody. There's no reason. I heard Kevin Hart say this on the Joe Rogan podcast, and maybe I said this on last episode, but it's good. He said, anytime somebody tells me something or gives me information, I'm going to take that information. I may not use it, but guess what? I have it and I can do something with it now. If you don't take in the information, if you don't take in the negative feedback, the positive feedback, the critique, the examples, the information, oh, I would have done it this way or whatever. If you don't entertain that and just listen to it for a second to get a different perspective, it's going to be tough for you to exhibit those skills that you are demanding of other people.
Absolutely. And that's why not everybody can be a leader or have leadership qualities, because quite frankly, it's hard. And the ones that are willing to take in that information, the ones that are willing to be critiqued, and the ones that are willing to stand for their whole team, it, or whatever community, whatever team they're part of. That's why it's so hard. They get judged the most, and that's why there's so little of them. So in order for you to prepare to be a leader, to prepare to have leadership qualities, understand that it's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough, and that's why not everybody can do it.
Yep. So this is our third time being on the live, right? And this time we have a title. It's called the X Factor with Xavier Scruggs, right? And so we got a title, and now I'm actually going to do something a little bit different we haven't done before. I'm surprising you with something right here.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. I got my man Nazir Moulay. What's up, Naz? How you doing, buddy? Got to get you off mute real quick. There we go. What's up, Naz? You're here with Xavier. What's going on, man?
Nothing much.
Xavier,
what's up, Nas?
This is my boy
What's
Nas.
up, Xavier?
So Nas, man, thanks for joining us today. So this is a new show that we got. You've been on the show with Nick Swisher. This one's a little bit different. Xavier is actually still playing baseball, right? He's a free agent. Spent 3 years in the big leagues. He's been over in Korea. He's played professional baseball at the minor league level. He's still in shape. He just got done hitting today. He's in shape, waiting for that call. And so, Nas, I asked you to join us today just to, talk a little bit, maybe give us some questions, give X some questions about the mental side. I know, you just started a new brand, Nas. You're man. I've known you since you're 12. You're 16 now, right?
I turned 16 in October. I'm still 15.
Oh, well, you're 15, but you're throwing 95, so I guess that's okay. So anyway, so I've known you since you're 12, man. You've been grinding. You're constantly, you're getting a lot of hate. You get people that come at you all the time. I mean, and I love seeing you react to it because you just smile. Like you take it in stride. You're always going back out in the field. You've always got a smile on your face. You go out there. If you go over, you still got the smile. You're still putting in the work. So thank you for joining us today. I know you got some questions. I know you got some things in your mind. So go ahead, ask away.
Well, the first thing I want to ask is, well, you're obviously a professional baseball player now, but like, what do you think has like influenced you the most, or like made the most impact to help you get where you are now?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and obviously there's
Xavier, do me a favor if you want, just because we're on IG Live. Also, if you just kind of want to repeat his question as you answer it, just so IG can see it, can hear it as well.
Yeah, so we have a young buck Nas here. He's asking what was one of the biggest influences on my career, and I feel like for me it was important to have mentors. I thought that I didn't necessarily want to have the mentors, especially when I was your age, 15, 16. I didn't understand the importance of it, but I had guys, and I think I mentioned this before, that I had guys that I was able to talk to, like Tony Gwynn, like a David Justice when I was growing up, some other guys that had played in the big leagues. They were kind of able to break it down to me and let me know that before anything else, everything was going to be mental. In order for me to separate myself, and that's what you're doing in high school and college, you're really separating, especially pro ball is your goal. You're really trying to separate yourself from the ones that you're playing with and against. So it's important to understand, like, your mental has to be right. Your mentality has to be, okay, I'm not comparing myself with everybody else that I'm around. I'm comparing myself to maybe that next level college, maybe that next level professional. Because you're not just playing against the guys, the 9 guys around you or whoever else is on the other team. You're playing against everybody in the whole country, especially if you're trying to get drafted, you're trying to make it to the next level. So what they kind of emphasized to me was that don't necessarily just look around this bubble that you're in right now. Always be focused on getting to the next level and understanding that your competition may not be right here. Your competition may be in college, or it may be as a professional, or it may be within the showcases that you go to. And even when you're at the showcases, they used to emphasize to me that you can't control who's around you. And I think that was one of the first things, like, mentally I had to understand is, like, I can't control what's going on around me. My team may be trash. I may have a tough first at bat, but that stuff is over. Like, I can't control that now. So all I can do is control, like, every little pitch that is in front of me. And I have to do that one at a time. So that was one of the biggest things for me, influence-wise, is like having mentors that were able to tell me, And things like this, like I didn't have this to be able to jump on a Zoom call. So like, I think this stuff is important. Like you're able to jump on, listen to what a professional player has to say, listen to what Prospect Dugout is teaching, some of those things, and putting them in your back pocket. So understanding that you can use them at all times. So when you ask that question, I think that's a great question. For me, it was having those mentors and kind of understanding I can only control what I can control.
Dude, that's cool that you said put that in your back pocket. That's kind of what Nick says, and I think that the understanding behind that is just knowing that you're able to do that, right? You're able to make those decisions. You're able to make those adjustments. So when you're keeping things close to you, the term, in your back pocket, you have that there, and you're able to use that in your skill set. Nas, we were just talking about before you hopped on the call. We were just talking about leadership, and Xavier was kind of just explaining his thoughts on leadership, and that he believes that leaders can be trained and developed. It's not just something you're born with, and we talked about that. And Nas, I've seen you play multiple times in person.
Mhm.
I've been in the dugout with you. I've followed you around with the camera. We've got a connection where you do your thing, I do my thing. After the game, we hang out, whatever. And so I've seen you around your teammates in the dugout, in between games, when you're in between fields, and I've seen you on the field. I think you definitely have leadership qualities. You definitely have what it takes. You're a tall kid, right? You got a loud voice, you got a loud fastball, you got a loud bat. So everything that you're doing is standing out. But I think what's really important is that, and this is something that we talked about on the show on Tuesday with Nick. Somebody called in and asked about the difference between, when do scouts and college coaches stop looking at a guy that's 6'4", throwing 95. When does he start looking at a guy that's 5'9" or 5'10", throwing 88, 89, but can pitch, can throw? And so I think for you, you've got those qualities, you've got those intangibles, but you're exhibiting leadership characteristics. You're not pouting, you're not arguing, you're competitive, right? You're ultra competitive. You'll show a little bit of emotion when it comes to competition, but it's a good emotion. You're not showing, a reaction from a strikeout or a bad pitch from an umpire. You don't show emotion really when it comes to that. You're even keeled, and I think as you mature, you'll start to understand, how to, keep those emotions in check, like the competitive emotions in check. Because I'll give you an example. Yesterday, and you can actually go back on the Prospect Dugout Instagram to watch this. This is an example for me. I haven't talked to Lucas about it, but my son Lucas was pitching yesterday over in Vieira, and in the 5th inning, the whole game the batters were stepping out because he likes to move quick, right? And so the whole game, the batters were stepping out, doing stuff, whatever. 5th inning comes around, he got in a little bit of a rough inning, whatever, gave up a 2-strike home run to a left-handed batter. Then, the next batter after that was just like stepping out late, right? And so I felt like right there in that competitive environment, Lucas lost his focus for a second, right? Because after that batter stepped out late, right? And then the coaches talked, whatever, we got back on the mound. What did Lucas do? He got onto the rubber, and then he stepped off and untucked his shirt, and then tucked his shirt back in, and then literally just stood there like this and waited. And then he did the slowest windup ever. So I think, I get that he was being competitive, but I think that exhibition of energy and effort kind of took away from what he was able to do on the mound. He let another batter on. That batter ended up getting a hit, lost a little bit of focus right there, and that ended up being his last inning. I think he had more in the tank, one more inning, if he would have learned to control that. So I said all that just to kind of reiterate that, yes, you do have those tools, but I think as you mature, you're going to refine even better those mental tools.
And I think it's important to also just mention real quick that the people at the next level, the coaches at the next level, the recruiters at the next level, the scouts, they're going to be looking for the best players. They already know that you're a great player. They're going to start looking for the little things that you do wrong. They're going to try to find what is it that he fails at? What is it? Where's his weakness? Whether it's mental, emotional, physical, they're going to try to start nitpicking, because that's how they separate players. And they try to figure out, okay, what's this player? He can't be 100% great. There's got to be something wrong with them. So the least that you can show them in terms of weaknesses and in terms of mental emotions and in terms of failure, the least that you can show them, the better it is, because then you hold the cards close to you.
For sure. Nas, I want to ask you a question because I want to transition into, giving you the opportunity to ask another question, but I want to also keep us on our 3 points. We're talking about leadership, accountability, and responsibility, right? So let's talk about accountability for a second, right? So Nas, tell me a little bit about your schedule right now. Obviously, you're up in New Jersey, right? You can't really get out playing baseball yet. I know down in Florida we're doing that, right? So just tell me a little bit about what you're doing on a daily basis to stay in shape, but then also be ready mentally to play when the time comes.
Well, usually during the week, usually Monday to Thursday, I have practice every day from anywhere between 12 o'clock to maybe 4:30. The time usually varies. I have a hitting coach over at I have a hitting and fielding coach both from PS2. Facilities aren't really allowed to be open right now, so we find a nearby field that we could go to, and I usually hit for an hour and then field for an hour, hour and a half sometimes. So I just do those things, and then after that's all over, when I get home, usually the same coaches, they have like a Zoom call for the rest of my teammates, not just myself, but they talk about more of the mental side of things, like, what you can be doing at home if you're not fortunate enough to be, like things like have a backyard and stuff. You could do certain stuff at home that'll help you when the time comes.
And that's something that you're just doing. You're making it a point to do that. No one's forcing you to do that. And your mom and dad's not saying, okay, Nas, let's go. Like I see you on Instagram. I see you making comments. I see you posting. I see what you're doing. Like you're definitely, you're accountable for yourself. You're definitely, taking initiative and putting in that work. So Xavier, why don't you touch a little bit on accountability, and then Nas, once he kind of rolls through this, why don't you be prepared to ask another question, and then you can kind of roll from there.
Yeah, I think Nas, you kind of mentioned something that's huge for accountability, and that's understanding that the coaches that you have, or the coaches that you're with, you're not able to necessarily get all the work that you want in, but they're able to provide in another way, virtually, a Zoom call. And you said they talk about the mental side of things. I think one of the first things about being accountable is understanding that you need that information. So you held yourself accountable to joining those Zoom calls. You held yourself accountable to understanding that, okay, I need to soak in as much information as possible. When we're accountable, we're able to do other things that, can shoot us wherever we need to be. When we hold ourselves accountable instead of, blaming somebody else for our failures or our mistakes, it'll be important. The more that you're able to learn via everything outside of practice right now, whether that's like Joel said, getting on the Instagram and finding out, okay, what are people posting that I could be learning from right now? Obviously, this is a time where we could just sit back at home and just relax and chill and just be lazy. But if you find yourself on the phone, why can't you be researching certain things? Like I see Alex Bregman, he has a breakdown of swings. He's breaking down kids' swings and young athletes' swings. So that's another way that I could be learning and holding myself accountable to this time that I have right now. There's just so much that, as far as an athlete, it's so easy for us right now to get lost in everything else that's going on, not being able to do everything that we can outside. But I think it's a time where we hold ourselves at a different standard than everybody else, especially if we call ourselves an extraordinary athlete or an athlete that wants to get to the next level. I think it's important for us to say, okay, what are the things that I could be doing that nobody else is doing? What are these front yard drills, these backyard drills, these driveway drills that I could be doing right now? Because when the time comes to be back 100% go, I don't want to have to blame anything that I did during this time for me not to be better or for me not to get better. So I think that that's one of the first steps we can do in holding ourselves accountable, is really understanding what we have with this time right now.
For sure. So this is our third episode of The X Factor with Xavier Scruggs. It's our first title episode called The X Factor. Nazir Moulay from Paterson, New Jersey, So thankful that you're joining us today. We're talking about leadership, responsibility, accountability right here on the Prospect Dugout Network. This is awesome. I love just chatting about this stuff. I'm getting comments in the Instagram live, people saying this is fire, this is awesome, love this stuff, a lot of waves and things like that. So Nas, I want to give you the floor one more time if you got another question to ask Xavier. Like I mentioned earlier, he played in the big leagues, but he's also a free agent still. He's still in shape, waiting for that call. So if there's anything on that standpoint, just want to open the floor to you again and give you the opportunity to ask Xavier a question.
All right. What I want to know is, throughout your whole career, you obviously made the big jump from high school to college and college to the major leagues and stuff. I wanted to know, like, what was the biggest thing you needed to adjust to when making those leaps?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something that we kind of talked about last week, I think a little bit, is kind of understanding like my time management and my priorities. And I think that's another thing that comes along with holding yourself accountable. Like when you go to college, you're away from your family most of the time. You have a certain schedule that you need to abide by, but you don't, or you have a certain schedule, but you don't necessarily have somebody holding your hand to take you to do everything on that schedule. So that was important for me to learn. Okay, how do I prioritize what I need to do as far as school, as far as workouts, as far as actually practicing, as far as extra work. I had to figure out for myself, which was really tough, is figuring out what do I need to prioritize, what needs to be first, what needs to be middle, what needs to be last, what do I need to sacrifice instead of. One of the big things is like when you go to college, you got so much free time to hang out with your friends, but then you realize if you're spending too much free time, you may not be getting the work done in class, and you may not be getting that extra work that you need to do as an athlete in college. Um, because just as well as anybody, in order for you to get to where you want to go, you have to be doing something extra over your teammates, over the players that you're playing against. So it was important for me to find out, how do I navigate that? And then when I went from college to the pros, it was like, man, it was a free for all. Like I didn't have classes. Like all I had to do was just play baseball. But then you kind of understand that, okay, I could either make this my profession or I could just make this my sport. It's easy just to like go out there and play like a lot of high schoolers do. You go out there every third day, whatever it may be, go play, go pitch, whatever, and then you're done. No, this became my job. So I had to research, how do I become the best in my job? How do I go on YouTube and find out, okay, how do I need to be fielding? I know my coach is telling me one thing, but how do I even get better at that? What are some of the major leaguers doing that are really good at that? Especially when I was in the minor leagues, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what are the major leaguers doing that are at the top of their game? How do I get better at that? Instead of me like losing track of time and not using my time wisely, I always try to figure out, what could I be doing to be getting better? I didn't want to waste time whatsoever. So time management was huge for me, and setting the priorities.
Dude, Nas, when are you going to be coming down to Florida to play? Sometime
Probably
soon?
around July, maybe.
My man, cannot wait. We're going to set you up with the microphone, get you mic'd up on the field while you're pitching. It's gonna be legit, buddy. Xavier, I don't know if you've seen Nas play at all online. Probably haven't seen him in person, but dude, he's got a public profile. He's got like 1 million followers. He's legit.
No,
He ain't got 1 million, but he's got quite a few. He's 15 years old, making a name for
less than you.
Nas, tell me, is it okay to tell me a little bit about your brand?
Well, I just started it really. Right now, we're only doing hats,
Okay.
and I've
What's
got a few.
what's the elevator pitch? What's the mission of the brand? What's the brand all about in like 25 seconds?
I kind of just want to be able to make a name for myself, because a lot of people are focused on the wrong things. Like they're focused on, partying, going out with friends, and doing stuff they're not supposed to really. But in my free time, I find it that why not do something productive? So I figure if I start my brand early now, maybe by the time I get to college, or, if I do hopefully get drafted out of high school or college, my brand will be already big. And then once I get to a higher level, hopefully it'll just start to expand even more than what it's already at.
What's it called?
Nasty.
Nasty. Spell it. Spell it.
Nazty.
Nazty,
Nazty.
like my man Nas, nasty. I love it, man, dude. You definitely got the skills. You've got definitely got what it takes to build that brand, man. You've done it already. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it, because go to your IG right after we get off this call. Go to your IG and look at the thing that says followers. Right, you've got a ton of followers. Then go look at your videos and look at your views. People are paying attention to you. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. Right, you have that confidence in baseball. Now you're starting a new endeavor, a new goal with this brand that you want to do. Take it the same way you're doing your baseball, man. It's a grind. You're at 0 right now, but then when you get 1, guess what? 1's better than 0. And when you get to 5, 5 is better than 1, right? So just keep grinding, keep growing, man.
Thank you.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
Get you joining, man. Keep building, keep going.
Thank
man.
you for having me.
All right, see you, Nas.
All right.
All right, how was that little surprise for you?
That was awesome, man.
No, man, we've been talking about getting a caller to come in, and I've been trying. We've been a little sporadic with the dates of when we're doing this, and so Nas is somebody that I can count on. If I reach out to him with a text message or a DM or something, he's always looking to help. He's always looking to kind of connect and do stuff. He's always around the cage. He's doing a lot of stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool. So we talked about
that's an extraordinary athlete, man.
Sounds like somebody that you might need to get on your show on the amateur side, dude. So we talked about leadership. We talked a little bit about accountability there. And so we've probably got about another 15 minutes to chat a little bit. Right. So let's kind of, let's dial it in and talk about responsibility. Maybe I'll kind of just hit it off real quick and give you my, couple thoughts. I really want to hear what you have to say, but I'm learning a lot. I think we're close to the same age. I'm 35. How are you?
32.
32. Oh, okay. All right. No, but I keep learning, I'm constantly learning and growing. And I think responsibility is something that a lot of people take that word for granted. They just don't have a complete understanding of what that means. And so I think, if you're just, let's do it from a baseball player standpoint, right? If you want to go out and you want to be a Mike Trout, you want to be a Ken Griffey Jr., you want to be, a David Wright, you want to be a Pete Alonso, you want to be whoever, right? Mm-hmm. It comes with some responsibility. Okay. What does that responsibility mean in that pathway? Nas hit on it too. And, and he'll understand this. Like I could sit there and could have talked with him a little bit about, the mission statement for his brand or whatnot, but you could tell the purpose of what he was trying to do. It's that he doesn't want to go out with friends. He doesn't want to go out and do this, do that. He has a goal in mind, and he's being responsible by saying, you know what, these things may be fun, and I'm only a kid once, but guess what? I'm only a kid once also when it comes to creating myself or turning myself into a professional baseball player. Right. And so he's made a decision, right? He's established himself as a leader. He's accountable because he's the one that's choosing to go out to practice. He's the one that's choosing to come home and hop on an hour-long Zoom call with the same dudes he was just with at practice to listen to them, talk to him again, right? He's holding himself accountable to do that. But now you're seeing that he has the understanding of where he wants to get, and it's leaking out, right? It's coming out in this brand of being responsible, of putting away the distractions and saying, this is me, Nazir Moulay. This is who I am. This is my brand of, I don't care about the distract. I don't care about whatever else is going on. I've got this passion and this purpose that I'm living my life for, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. So that's what I think. For me, I think responsibility means is that if you're supposed to be doing something, do it. If you should be doing something, do it. If it makes sense to do something, if it's the right thing to do, if it's respectful to do that, then you need to do that. That's the responsible thing to do.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think being responsible and having responsibility is understanding that you're going to fail at a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And we kind of talked about this a little earlier. It's like you can't take the blame and put it on somebody else. When it has to do with what you did on the field or what you did as a person, you have to be responsible for those actions. I remember when I was in college, my dad, he got my quote unquote like grades and report card before the baseball season started, before my sophomore year, I believe it was. And he saw that I had a D in my, I believe it was my economics class. And knowing that I was still eligible, I didn't even think anything of it. I was just happy to get ready for baseball season coming up soon in the spring. And he pulled me aside during winter break, and he said, Xavier, he's like, if you don't get your grade in economics up, like I'm liable to just pull you straight out of baseball. And I was kind of thinking about it. I was like, but my other grades are fine. I'm still eligible. Baseball season is starting soon. Like, I'm good. And he kind of made me understand that if I'm going to slip up in one class, then that could easily turn into 2 classes, 3 classes. And all I'm thinking about is, okay, just keep your GPA good enough.
Mm-hmm.
He reminded me that just like baseball, good enough is not good enough. You know, you want to be great. You want to take your game, your level, you want to take it to the next level. So with baseball and everything that you do, he emphasized to me it was important. And then I realized, okay, it's not anybody else's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't put this on the teacher. I can't put this on, me being distracted or anything like that. I have to understand that it was my own responsibility to get all of my grades right. And I think that's important for the young athletes to kind of understand. It's like, this doesn't fall on anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And the earlier that you're able to understand that, the better it's going to be in the long run, that you're responsible for all your actions. You're responsible for all your grades, all the things that you do on the field. I think that that's going to be so important for athletes to be able to grind through things too. So if I understand that I'm responsible for my own failure on the field, if I had a tough game, the easier it is going to be for me to fix those things.
Mm-hmm.
But if I put the blame on somebody else, that pitcher he just had my number today. You know how many times I've like heard that and realized that that's almost just the kind of the easy way out. No, what did I do wrong? How can I take responsibility for swinging at some bad pitches? What are the things I can learn from it? That's how you take responsibility, is understanding those things that you can learn from and just getting better at that. And it's not easy.
Yeah, I think that really is a cop out, man. I think that, dude, I've been listening. I've been saying this every episode that I have. I keep talking about, I was listening to the Gary Vee podcast, and I went through a phase where I listened to him a lot, then I stopped listening to him, but he's back and he's got some good nuggets. But I really feel like that's a weak mindset, right? Like, coming up with an excuse for an at bat, or the pitcher was this, the pitcher was that. Like, there's everybody knows that player. Every team has that player. I mean, every team has every kind of player like that. There's baseball stereotypes. There really is. Every team has this. They're a little bit different, but exactly what you're saying is true. They come back to the dugout. Oh man, he had a little hitch in this, or, oh, the backdrop was this, or, he was quick pitching me in this. It's always somebody else's fault, right? And I think the moral of the story is, good. Let them stop, because guess what? The higher you get, the harder it is. The higher you get, the more responsibility you have, right? And I'm not just talking about in baseball. Like, just think about it in your regular job. Like, your boss, starts paying attention to you. You start doing good things, and all of a sudden the boss says, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you help me out with this? Can you take on this task that's above your pay grade, that's above what you're doing?" You could either say, "Oh, dude, why is he giving me all this extra work?" Or you could look at it and say, "He's giving me responsibility. He's giving me the opportunity to do this, He's showing me some trust to say, okay, let's see what he can accomplish." I think that's where a lot of people miss out, is because they get to that point where they're given that opportunity and they don't see that instant reward, right? They don't see the immediate return on investment, and they're like, I don't want to do it. When if they would have just stuck with it for a couple minutes, it could have turned into something. Like, I was on the podcast today. One of the guys from an e-commerce store was working on his business for 20 years until he sold it. And that's when he made his money. If he'd have given up at 19 years, he'd have missed out. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think it all comes down to, boiling it down to be like, if you're passionate about what you're doing, if you're happy about what you're doing, then those decisions become easier. So I think at the root of the matter is enjoy what you're doing, because that responsibility is going to increase. What do you think about, like, talk about responsibility, kind of like what I was just talking about, but in terms of baseball, like, you know, a coach or other players are now coming to you and asking you to do this, or maybe the coach is saying, hey, can you stick around afterwards to help me with this or to help me with that? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think that touches on some of the points that we first talked about, and that's leadership. I think when you hold yourself accountable and you have responsibilities that maybe you know you didn't take on from the beginning, or you're starting to realize you're getting more responsibility, then that shows that you're able to be a leader. You're able to set the prime example. I think we have a comment here on IG Live that was a good point, that and the Advanced Athletics said feel like parents don't hold their kids accountable on that subject at a young age. And I think that that's part of the problem. You know, I think that the parents have to set the stage and the foundation of, okay, you're responsible as a kid. You're responsible. You need to be held accountable. I think that has to be set from at home as much as possible. And if it's not, then help them understand by getting them a mental coach or getting them a life skills coach so that they can be better in their sport and outside of their sport. Another point that was also mentioned is like blaming the umpires.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another thing that we kind of talk about, is like when you're able to take responsibility for your own actions, even if it may not be your own actions, that's still a leadership quality. Taking responsibility for somebody else, understanding that, you know what, I'm not going to give you the blame. I'll take the blame today. Some of the best players, some of the best athletes, LeBron James, you see interviews, like it's never somebody else's fault. I'll take the blame for the team, you know? So I think that the earlier we understand that as athletes, the earlier we understand that it is our responsibility to, you know, just control what we can control.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the better along that they'll be able to get past some of those tougher issues, because we're always going to get tough issues thrown at us, especially as we're climbing the ladder. Like you mentioned, in other professions, you're going to get stuff thrown at you that you don't always want. But the more responsibility that you're able to take, the better you are for the person you work for. You know, the better the coach understands, okay, I can throw some more on this guy. He's one of my top players, you know, mentally, not necessarily just on the field, but he can handle it. And I appreciate him being a leader. And those are some of the qualities, like Prospect Dugout talks about, some of those things to get to the collegiate level or get to professional level. The scouts are looking for players that take responsibility for their own actions, the players that aren't necessarily, like you talked about earlier, showing that emotion a lot of the times. And that's a maturity thing too. So we have to remember that it's always going to be a process. We can't expect ourselves to have leadership qualities right away. We can't expect ourselves to always hold ourselves accountable, but we can build. We can always build. And I think that's something that Nas understood, is that he's building his own brand. He understands that it's not what it needs to be right now, but he's building it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool because he's building the brand. He doesn't know necessarily what he wants to do with it, but what's coming out is his mindset and what he really believes. So I think that's really cool. All right, so dude, we've been on here about an hour. Okay, so let's try this now. Let's go back. We talked about leadership, accountability, responsibility, right? We just wrapped up responsibility. So let's take it back to the beginning. I'm going to share on the screen for those on Facebook and YouTube a page from your website, right? So I want you to just recap maybe 15 to 20 seconds on each of the 3 points, and then maybe a little bit about what you're doing with, when you'll see it on the screen, what you're doing there. And then I'll come back up. We'll close it up.
Yeah,
Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
All right. So why don't you kind of just recap the leadership, accountability, responsibility, and then tell me about what's on the screen.
Basically, as we talked about leadership, we talked about 3 things: leadership, accountability, and responsibility as athletes and as people. Leadership, first and foremost, is putting others before yourself, understanding that you have an influence on others and you're able to understand that they're always watching you and your actions. And you have to always be performing in the right manner because you have eyes on you and you're helping others. You're understanding that others have issues. You're not necessarily so concerned about yourself or so self-centered. So I think that's first and foremost coming with leadership. Accountability, just, the fact of, if I need to get certain things done, especially as an athlete, that you know what, nobody else is going to get in the way of that. There's not going to be any distractions. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do. I'm the head of myself. I'm the CEO of my own brand. I have to get it done. I can't count on anybody else. And then responsibility is understanding that, you know, I have to take on a role, or I have to take on roles that understand that nobody else is in charge of. It's me. I have to take the responsibility of getting the job done. I have to take the responsibility of doing my homework. I have to take the responsibility of getting the right grades in order for me to play. So I think that those are the things that you kind of understand as, and also another part of responsibility is, you know, kind of almost as we talked about with accountability, it's like, it's not anybody else's fault but mine. I need to understand that. And then you kind of just brought up my screen here. I saw the XO athletes, and this is, you know, this is Extraordinary Athletes Virtual, basically an opportunity for athletes to go one-on-one with me as I talk about some of these skills, you know, and talk about, first and foremost, our packages, talking about time management, talking about leadership, talking about how we develop those qualities, and talking about having a routine, because those are all so important for young athletes. So if you want to join in, it's not only just me, but you have access to my network, guys like you, guys like Jason Hayward, guys like Dinar Span, you know, a lot of different athletes that can be able to provide some of that information and some of those tools for young athletes.
Dude, that's awesome, man. That's what we need. That's, you know, I think, again, on the podcast I was listening to this morning, was that, you know, all this stuff was around. You know, FaceTime was here, Zoom calls were here, live videos were here, but people weren't taking advantage of it until they got to the point where they weren't able to go out and see people. And then all of a sudden you're FaceTiming everybody. Then all of a sudden you're not taking phone calls, you're calling them on FaceTime, you're calling them on you know, a Zoom or something like that. So I think, you know, just evolving and being ready to impact lives. So what you got with your virtual academy is great, because, you know, you're providing quality content right here. You're providing insight, and it's not like you're holding anything back here. That's not the point. You're not saying, hey, I'm giving you a little bit here, and then come to my virtual academy, I'll give you all of it. No, you're giving all of it every day. Like I see you, you know, you're posting on Instagram, you're going live with this guy, you're going live with this guy, all these MLB guys. Like, you're just doing it. You're doing it for free because you want to share that message. You want to share that positivity. You want to share that insight, and you want to, you know, you want to have an impact on people's lives. So I think that's really cool. But, you know, for anybody that's interested in some virtual training with a guy like Xavier, you can head over to xoathletes.com/virtual. And that can be a place where you can get started for that. So Xavier, you're really making a name for yourself in what you're doing. I really appreciate you taking your time to join this show with me. I mean, I know you're the title guy, so that kind of makes sense for you.
Oh,
No, I'm just playing, man. No, I love, you know, I love getting on these Zoom calls and just talking baseball, talking life. I'm learning stuff. Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm not just here listening to you and then producing it and then sharing it and say, hey, thanks, man, we'll see you next time. Like, I've been taking notes, I've been writing stuff down, but then on top of that, I've been implementing some of this stuff, man. I've been using some of the stuff that you've been saying. You know, we have a show with Nick Swisher every Tuesday night, Kicking It with your boy Swish. I've been using the stuff that he's saying. You know, we talk on the phone regularly. He's very influential. He's very positive. You know, we just had a conversation yesterday, and you know, he kind of spent a couple minutes just building me up. It was like, the phone call turned into a one-on-one session. He just started, you know, saying, you know, we're this, you got to have this mindset, you know, stay focused on this. So it's nice. You know, I've never had someone that I would call quote unquote mentor, where I'm actually going out and seeking that. But I feel like, I'm not saying that Nick is a mentor, but I felt like in that moment right there, he felt the conversation going a certain way, and he took the initiative to say, okay, I'm working with you on this, but I'm going to impact your life and I'm going to help you out here. So I'm definitely having fun with all of these things. So I'm happy to say that, you know, we're making the X Factor with Xavier Scruggs a weekly thing. We're just going to detail out exactly what day and time that is, but we've been standard pretty much around 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I think that'll be good. But Xavier, man, this is great. I'm looking forward to next week. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, just thanks to everybody that kind of came along and was giving, high fives, giving the waves, giving comments and questions. I'm just running through them, and it's awesome to see it. So keep doing that, and we appreciate that. Appreciate
sure.
you, Prospect Dugout, man.
Thank you,
Big
sir.
things, big things coming.
Everybody that's watching on Instagram live, Advanced Athletics, you've been watching the entire time. So thank you, buddy. I appreciate your comments. Thanks for the great advice. Leo Baseball God said, you are very, very welcome. This is what we're here for. So thank you for everybody that's watching on Facebook and YouTube as well. If you could do me a favor and go ahead and share or leave a comment or like it. I mean, that would help our engagement and our analytics a little bit. So we can, that's how you play your part in other people seeing this content. Like, we're getting on here, on a weekly basis, putting it out there. We need help from you. We need you guys to share it. We need you guys to comment. We need you guys to tag people. If you feel like something stood out in this and you're watching on Instagram, right? Go over to Facebook, go over to YouTube to get the full video, because it's not going to live on Instagram, and then tag somebody, or, copy and paste that link and send it to somebody, because that's how you can have an impact. We talk about that, Nick talks about getting, 10% better each day, and Xavier, we talked about leadership, accountability, and responsibility today. So I feel like, you guys that are watching on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, you can show those three qualities right here of being a leader, being accountable, and being responsible. Hook somebody up, help somebody out, have an impact on their life. If it meant something to you, it could mean something to somebody else that's in your life. So thank you to everybody that is active in commenting and sending DMs. We go through the DMs. Xavier, I don't know exactly how you are on DMs, but I know we connected through DMs, so I know that you're looking at them. But I just encourage everybody that's watching, you don't know unless you ask. You don't know if it's a yes or a no until you ask the question and someone says yes or no. So go ahead and reach out and ask questions. Go ahead and, and talk with people. But thank you guys so much for all your support. Xavier, it's been a great time today on the X Factor with Xavier Scruggs. Looking forward to next week. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you guys.
All right. Take it easy.